General Hospital spoilers reveal that Willow, once the embodiment of serenity, selflessness, and loyalty, is now at the center of an emotional storm. One of her worst fears is beginning to consume her life, the irreparable failure in the custody battle for the two children she loves more than anything, Wiley and Amelia. She once believed that her love for them would be her strongest foundation in the brutal courtroom fight, that she would walk into court as a compassionate mother, ready to fight to the end. But the painful truth revealed the opposite. Every misstep she made in recent months is now being revisited, scrutinized, and dissected. Shattering the responsible image of Willow she tried so hard to protect, now reduced to a mere illusion. One of the cruelest realizations comes when Willow understands she gambled everything by following the alluring path Drew laid out, only to discover she was used and manipulated like a pawn. From signing over medical proxy rights to Drew, to the naive act of naming him as guardian in case of her death, everything has been weaponized against her in court. Michael's attorneys, armed with evidence from Jason and even Brick, painted a bleak picture of a mother who is easily influenced, disoriented, and unfit to protect her children's best interests. Willow's tears can no longer redeem an image tainted by her own misplaced trust and emotional vulnerability. But the most terrifying truths don't come from the courtroom, they come from within Willow herself, as she uncovers the depths of the manipulation she has fallen victim to. She realizes Drew approached her not purely out of affection, but as part of a broader agenda, to build power, to target Sonny and Michael, and to use her as a tool against the Corinthos family. Fragmented memories begin to form a coherent picture, Drew urging her to distance herself from Carly, subtle advice that seeded doubt about Michael. And the way he always offered solutions whenever she was in crisis. Willow wakes up from a long dream, only to face the devastating cost of awakening, not just legal defeat, but emotional devastation, a wound that may never heal. After the court's decision is handed down, with custody awarded to Michael and Willow's reputation, trust, and honor left in ruins, she finds herself with no reason to stay in Port Charles. She is no longer the legal mother of Wiley, no longer entrusted with caring for Amelia. And, most painfully, no longer recognized as a member of the family she loved with all her heart. Every room, every street corner, every glance in town becomes a reminder of what she has lost. Places that once held sweet memories now serve as mirrors reflecting her downfall. Willow realizes that if she stays, she will forever be the woman brought down by her own mistakes. And so, she leaves. No drama. No official goodbye. No plea for forgiveness. Just a small suitcase, a midnight bus, and a quiet pain no one else could truly understand. In her heart, Port Charles is no longer home, it's a monument to an irreversible tragedy. Willow doesn't know where she's going, or if she'll ever return. But she knows one thing, she has to leave. To stop hurting others, and maybe, just maybe, find herself again, if that's even possible. Behind her are stifled cries, unanswered questions from Wiley and Amelia. And hearts she never meant to break. Ahead is a journey with no clear destination, but for the first time, Willow walks on her own 2 feet. No longer a pawn. No longer a victim. Just a woman trying to reclaim the fragments of her life, with the fragile hope that one day, she might be worthy of love again. Willow is quietly sinking into the abyss of an inescapable crisis. As the consequences of her mistakes with Drew begin to unfold. She once believed Drew was her anchor, the only one there for her when Michael seemed distant and emotionally unavailable during the darkest moments. But what Willow didn't see, or perhaps chose to ignore, was that she was being strategically led, coldly used, as part of a plan Drew had been orchestrating all along. Her emotional fragility and longing to be loved made her push away the very people who once loved her most, and now, she's paying the ultimate price, the loss of her family. What haunts Willow most isn't just the custody loss, it's the deep, irreparable rift with Michael. The man who once sacrificed everything for her, who forgave, waited, and believed love could weather any storm, has now been burned by the very trust he gave her. Willow's blind loyalty to Drew, from her legal support to concealing their ambiguous relationship, has cost her everything. And when Michael uncovered the full truth, there was no space left for forgiveness. The trust was betrayed. The heart, broken. What they once shared is now just a dead, silent past. Willow thought she was in control, that her actions were to protect the children and seek peace for herself. But she never imagined that those small adjustments would lead to a point of no return. Drew manipulated her for power, to pressure Michael and Jason, to isolate Carly and Sunny, using Willow as a stepping stone. Now, she is no longer a wife, a mother, or even the dedicated teacher she once was. She has become a pawn in a much darker game than she realized. Her inner turmoil is no longer hidden. She breaks down in court. The sleepless nights take their toll. She is exhausted, anxious, and unraveling. Willow doesn't just feel abandoned by her former family, she feels shunned by the entire community of Port Charles. Every look feels suspicious, every word tinged with mockery, and former friends now keep their distance. Alone. In pain. And pushed to the edge. Michael has chosen a different path, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. He can no longer trust a woman who, in a matter of months, has torn down every value they built together. He must act to protect Amelia and Wiley from growing up in a world distorted by betrayal and manipulation. That's why Michael, backed by Jason, Carly, and even allies once loyal to Sunny, has launched a fierce counterattack. Drew is the primary target, but Willow is collateral damage. Unable to escape the fallout of the war she unknowingly helped ignite. And in the midst of it all, Willow finally understands, there's no place left for her in Port Charles. She can't go back to Michael. She can't rely on Drew, whose true nature is now being exposed, and who will soon face legal consequences. She is no longer the legal mother to Wiley and Amelia. She is no longer welcome in any of the homes that once gave her warmth. If she stays, she'll only keep hurting those around her, and keep sinking into a pit of failure and grief. And so, on a cold rainy night, Willow quietly packs her things. She tells no one. No tears. No farewells. Just a brief letter, apologizing to her children, to Michael, and to herself, for not being strong enough to resist temptation, to protect the one thing that mattered most, family. She leaves Port Charles a stranger. Departing from a town that was once the source of her greatest joy, now reduced to a land of haunting memories and bitter regret. Willow doesn't know where this journey will take her. But she knows that to start over, she must accept all her mistakes, face them, and try to rediscover the part of her soul long buried under manipulation, loss, and betrayal. This is no longer a battle for custody. This is a battle to save herself. Willow is in the midst of a complete breakdown, where not only her identity as a mother is under threat, but her very sense of self, her values, and her self-esteem are gradually unraveling. The brutal custody battle over Wiley and Amelia has become a mental and emotional fight for survival. Willow finds herself not only confronting Michael, her former husband, life partner, and the devoted father of her children, but also facing the blind decisions and mistakes she once believed were right. Failure is no longer just a looming threat, it is a present, undeniable reality. And when the final verdict is announced, that she is no longer the legal guardian of her children, Willow doesn't just lose her rights as a mother. She loses the very reason she has kept herself upright in this world. Once praised for her resilience, devotion, and boundless maternal love, Willow has now become a name whispered in gossip. Judged and cast aside. Every glance in Port Charles now carries suspicion or pity. The whispers behind her back are no longer imagined, they are truths laid bare. Those who once supported her have fallen silent or turned away. Even those closest to her, like Carly, Jason, or Monica, no longer know how to look at her. She had let Drew take a central place in her life at her most vulnerable moment, and when Drew's missteps were exposed, Willow had no choice but to fall with him. But the worst of all is the psychological toll of facing Wiley and Amelia. Children have memories, emotions, and when adult conflicts become daily noise, they're forced to pick a side. Though they once called her mom, though they once fell asleep in her arms and trusted her eyes, her embrace, her smile, now everything is different. Willow is beginning to realize that she is not just losing custody, she is losing the sacred bond between mother and child, an invisible thread that, once severed, no apology can repair. She's watched Wiley pull away from her arms and run to Michael. She's heard Amelia call for Carly in her sleep instead of whispering, "Mom." These tiny moments, once the source of unspeakable joy, are now daggers stabbing into her broken heart. The pain does not show through tears, but through the emptiness in her gaze. The heaviness in each step, the sleepless nights haunted by an unstoppable flood of memories. She tried to reach out to the children after the court's decision. But instead of the embrace she once knew, all she received was avoidance. The words looping in her mind, "I still love you," now feel hollow, because the ones meant to hear them no longer believe. She once thought a mother's love was eternal, that love could bridge any distance. But reality is teaching Willow a cruel lesson. Love is not enough to hold on to your children when trust has been broken and the image of their mother has faded from their fragile minds. Added to that is the fear for her own future. She has nowhere to return to. The home once filled with laughter is now just walls, empty and cold. Drew, who once promised to stand by her forever, is now buried under allegations. Possibly facing prison. Willow has not only lost her children and her husband, but also the last bit of stability she clung to for survival. A terrifying thought rises in her mind. If she were to leave Port Charles tomorrow, would anyone care? Would anyone try to stop her? Or would she be forgotten, as if she had never existed? The feeling of being erased from the lives of others, especially from the lives of the children she gave birth to, raised, and loved more than herself, is what makes Willow unable to recognize herself anymore. She is no longer Wiley's mom, no longer Michael's wife, no longer Willow, the devoted teacher. She is now just a shadow, swallowed by her own wrong choices. And when the question, "Who is Willow?" no longer has a clear answer, she knows it is time to leave Port Charles. Not to run away, but to find herself again. Because if she doesn't, she will only live as a failure, haunted by the absence of voices once calling her mom, cast out from the very memories that once defined her life. In one final moment, Willow stands silently, looking at the house that was once her home. No tears. No anger. Only a profound sorrow for what has been lost, things she may never regain. Willow is drifting through a shattered reality, where everything she once tried to build with forgiveness, love, and compassion has turned to ruthless shards of betrayal and lies. For a long time, she struggled with past traumas, separations, losses, and the prolonged misunderstandings between her and Nina, the biological mother fate delivered too late. Willow had tried to move past hatred, to close her eyes to a bitter past in hopes of building a mother-daughter connection she never had. But now, all those efforts have been cruelly betrayed. Nina's secret attempts to expose the truth about Sasha's pregnancy, and her affair with Drew, were not just indirect attacks on Michael or Sasha, but a complete destruction of the fragile bond Willow fought to protect. She feels herself being pulled into an abyss, not by an outside force, but by the very woman she once called Mom. The one she had chosen to forgive. This hurt cannot be described in words. It isn't just disappointment, it is annihilation from within, a total collapse of trust. Willow cannot forgive, cannot forget, and certainly cannot continue seeing Nina as a mother. She will erase her from her life, not just through actions, but from her heart as well. The earlier attempts to reconnect now seem foolish and weak. She feels used, once again, by someone who always put personal interest above all else. Nina's interference wasn't about protection, but about control, just as she had done to so many others. Willow no longer has the strength to be another victim in that cycle of manipulation. The crueler consequence of this betrayal is what follows. Willow is no longer the mother of Wiley and Amelia, not in the eyes of the law, and increasingly not in the hearts of the children. Slowly, day by day, her connection with them vanishes like morning fog. Their voices calling Mom become hesitant. Their eyes look at her like a stranger's. Their hugs are stiff, evasive. This loss, combined with the blow from her birth mother, is driving Willow into a psychological storm so intense that not even she can predict its consequences. She has nothing left to hold on to. Drew, who once vowed to be by her side, has been unmasked, revealed as a manipulator. Michael, the man who once loved her, is now a cold adversary in the courtroom. And Nina, the only biological mother she's ever had, is now her greatest betrayer. Willow stands in the eye of a storm that is tearing apart every relationship, every feeling, every value she once held dear. She is no longer the strong woman, the gentle mother, or the empathetic daughter. She has become a hollow shell, walking through the darkness burdened by broken trust. And so, inevitably, Willow will leave. Not because she wants to escape, but because she has no other choice. Port Charles, once a place where she found family, love, and purpose, has now become the embodiment of everything she has lost. Every street corner, every room, every familiar face only reminds her of the children she can't reach, the husband she lost, and the mother she can no longer name. Willow's departure is not the end, but a painful testament to the truth. Sometimes, love cannot save a person from betrayal. Sometimes, the truth does not set you free, it shatters everything. She will leave behind everything, those she once loved, the children she gave birth to, and a life she once believed she'd always have. She is no longer Willow of Port Charles. She is now a woman exiled from her own life, carrying a shattered heart and an uncertain future. Yet even in the depths of that despair, perhaps somewhere, a tiny hope still flickers, that one day, she will find herself again, in another place, with a new beginning, a place with no lies, no betrayals, and no more Nina Reeves. Willow was once the embodiment of compassion, gentleness, and unwavering will. But after a long trail of hurt, betrayal, and loss in Port Charles, she has reached the limits of her endurance. The custody battle over the children she loved like her own flesh became an inescapable nightmare. The love she once thought unbreakable with Michael is now just shattered memories. The trust she placed in Drew is now a bitter lesson in naivety. And the bond she hoped to build with Nina, the mother fate brought too late, has become the gravest threat to her dignity and future. Amid that storm, Willow has no choice but to let it all go and leave. Her departure is not an ending, but the beginning of something new, outside the cruel vortex of deceit in Port Charles. She has submitted an application to join Doctors Without Borders, a bold, unexpected decision, but one that aligns perfectly with her healing, giving nature. With exceptional medical skills, endless compassion, and a longing to help those who truly need her, Willow chooses to pour the last of her energy into serving in the world's most devastated places. She no longer wants to be at the center of manipulative games, deceitful court trials, or dark secrets unspooling day after day. She chooses to be a light in the darkest corners, where truth isn't distorted and love isn't conditioned by power or vengeance. Willow's decision has sent shockwaves through Port Charles. News of her departure at the peak of the turmoil has left the town buzzing with confusion and regret. Some accuse her of running away. Others praise her bravery for stepping out of the shadows to rediscover the true meaning of life. But more than anyone, Willow knows she has nothing left to hold her here. She is no longer a mother in the eyes of her children, no longer a wife in Michael's heart, and certainly not a daughter Nina can ever justify controlling. All Willow needs now is a sky of her own to heal, to recover her soul, even if it's in a war zone, a disaster area, or among silent patients waiting for a second chance at life. Still, that choice does not come without consequences. A wave of fear and unease is spreading. Those who once manipulated Willow, especially Drew and Nina, are starting to feel their loss of control. Her departure means they can no longer use her as a pawn in their schemes. Jason, the one person who saw her pain without judgment in her final days, feels a deep void as this once hopeful, trustworthy friend leaves without a proper goodbye. For those who once loved Willow, her joining Doctors Without Borders is a symbol of rebirth, a journey to rediscover her soul in a world full of sorrow. But for those who pushed her to the brink, her departure is the most silent, yet fiercest declaration, even absent. Willow is the mirror of their collapse, a woman betrayed by family, by love, by her own mother, who chose to heal the world rather than seek revenge. In the end, Willow's departure becomes the wake-up call for everyone left behind. She will not look back. Not once. She will become a distant symbol of all that was good. Now lost, a permanent reminder that sometimes, losing someone doesn't mean death, but the silence of those who didn't fight for her when she needed them most. And in every journey to distant lands, with each patient she heals, Willow will slowly find herself again, until the painful days of Port Charles become nothing but a distant echo of a madness she never wished to be part of. Michael is entering a whole new phase of his life, one in which the breakdown of his marriage to Willow not only leaves a deep emotional void, but also opens the way to more complex connections. Especially with Sasha. In his darkest days, when everything seems to be falling apart, Sasha appears beside Michael as a strange puzzle piece, both familiar and strange. Someone who has suffered for him and someone who deeply understands the torment he is going through. Their conversations become more frequent, their glances longer than necessary. And the cracks in their hearts seem to find a terrifying compatibility. Though both deny it, an inevitable love triangle is forming, between Michael, Sasha, and the remnants of Willow. Unresolved emotions, buried secrets, and especially the unborn child Sasha is carrying, all of these make the intimacy between Michael and Sasha a ticking time bomb. Michael, struggling through custody trials, Drew's betrayal, and the collapse of his trust in Willow, finds in Sasha a listening ear, someone who has experienced the devastation of public opinion, hurt, and loss. They don't need to talk much. The empathy between two broken souls is something that cannot be explained in words. However, when that feeling begins to go beyond mere comfort, the real storm begins to form. On the one hand, Michael still carries the responsibility of being a father, a moral beacon in the eyes of the public. On the other hand, he can't deny the thrill he feels every time he sees Sasha, especially when that feeling is amplified by the possibility that he is the father of her child. As Sasha clings to the lie that Jason is the father, Michael's suspicions are growing, and those suspicions are drawing them closer together, not through trust, but through a desire to know the truth. Meanwhile, Willow, who has retreated from Michael's life to escape Port Charles and her own mistakes, will become an outsider in the very story she once centered on. This love triangle will be more than a game of emotions, but the beginning of a disaster of trust, reputation, and power. All three carry raw wounds, and now, as they enter this intertwined relationship, they will drag not only each other, but innocent children and a city that once stood by them with them. Michael and Sasha's story is no longer about redemption, it's about obsession. A connection born from ruin, nurtured by lies, and growing in the gray area of love and responsibility. With each passing day, emotions mount, and the danger of losing control becomes more apparent. Because once Michael crosses the line with Sasha, physically and emotionally, there is no turning back. Not for him, not for Sasha, and certainly not for Willow, who will have to bear witness to a devastating truth. She pushed the man she loved into the arms of the woman she once considered a friend. This love triangle is not just a test of love, but the beginning of a new tragedy, where every lie has a price, and every wrong decision leaves an indelible scar. And so, what was once a family is transformed into a battlefield of tears, regret, and haunting obsession.